The phone rang 3 times before she realized she'd dialed the wrong number, but by then, panic had already poured out of her in a single breathless rush. "Please, I need help. He knows where I live. He knows my locks. I can't go to the police again. They won't believe me. I just need somewhere safe for a few nights, please." Silence answered her. Then a voice, low and amused, with an accent she couldn't place, something old-world and deliberate. "You have reached a very interesting wrong number." Jessica Keller froze, her hand trembling against the cracked screen of her phone. She was crouched in the bathroom of her apartment, door locked, shower running to mask the sound of her voice. The window in her bedroom was open. She hadn't left it that way. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought I was calling a friend who promised you sanctuary," the voice finished, "but your friend gave you 1 digit wrong, it seems. How unfortunate, or perhaps not." She should have hung up. Every instinct screamed at her to end the call, to try the number again, to find the real safe house her coworker had mentioned in hushed tones over coffee 3 days ago, when Jessica had finally broken down and confessed that someone had been following her for 6 months, someone who left notes under her door, someone who somehow knew what she'd eaten for breakfast, what route she took to work, what time she turned off her bedroom light. But something in that voice held her, a certainty, a kind of gravity. "He's in my apartment," she said, and her voice cracked. "Right now, I can hear him in the kitchen." The amusement vanished from the voice. What replaced it was colder, sharper. "Then you will leave immediately. There is a car outside your building, black with tinted windows. The driver will know you. Get in it. Bring nothing." "I don't. You called asking for help. I'm offering it. The choice is yours, but make it quickly." The line went dead. Jessica's hands shook as she lowered the phone. From beyond the bathroom door came the soft sound of footsteps, the creak of her bedroom floorboards. He was getting bolder. The notes had turned into gifts left on her pillow. The gifts had turned into signs that he'd touched her things, moved them, held them. And now he simply walked into her home as though he had every right. She turned off the shower, held her breath, and eased the bathroom window open. She lived on the 2nd floor. The drop wouldn't kill her, might sprain an ankle, but that was better than whatever waited in her bedroom. She climbed out, hung from the sill, and let go. The impact jolted through her legs and she stumbled, biting back a cry. Above her, she heard the bathroom door crash open. No time. She ran, limping, toward the street, and there it was, exactly as the voice had promised, a black car, sleek and gleaming under the streetlights, so out of place in this shabby neighborhood that it looked like a mirage. The back door opened before she reached it. "Get in, Miss Keller," said the driver. A man with pale skin and silver hair pulled back in a neat tail. His eyes were too light, almost colorless. She got in. The door closed with a heavy final sound, and the car pulled away from the curb with such smoothness that she barely felt the motion. She twisted in her seat, looking back. A figure stood in the window of her apartment, silhouetted against the light, watching her go. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," the driver said. His voice was polite, utterly neutral. "Master Bastien has extended his protection." "Who is Bastien?" "The man you called." The city blurred past the windows. They drove for nearly an hour, moving out of her neighborhood, through the glittering downtown with its towers of glass and steel, and then into an older part of the city she'd never visited, where the buildings were stone and the streets narrow. The car descended into an underground parking structure that seemed to go down far deeper than any normal garage, spiraling into the earth until Jessica lost count of the levels. Finally, they stopped. The driver opened her door and gestured toward an ornate elevator with wrought iron gates. "He is waiting for you," the driver said. Jessica stepped out on trembling legs. Everything in her body told her this was insane, that she should run, that she'd traded one danger for another. But where would she run to? Back to her apartment, where her stalker had a key. To the police, who had told her 3 times that without evidence of a direct threat, they couldn't help her. To her parents, who lived 2,000 miles away and thought she was being paranoid. She stepped into the elevator. The driver closed the gate and pressed a button marked with a symbol she didn't recognize. The descent was so smooth she barely felt it, but it lasted long enough that her ears popped. When the elevator stopped and the gate opened, she stepped out into a world that didn't belong in the modern city above. The corridor stretched before her, lit by lamps that flickered like real flame behind panels of amber glass. The walls were stone, old stone, the kind that belonged in castles and cathedrals. Tapestries hung at intervals, depicting scenes of forests and hunts and figures that moved too gracefully to be human. The air was cool and smelled faintly of earth and something else, something sweet and metallic that she couldn't name. At the end of the corridor, a door stood open. Light spilled out, warmer than the lamps. Jessica walked toward it because there was nowhere else to go. The room beyond was enormous. It might have been called a throne room in another age, but it was furnished like a study, with shelves of books rising to a vaulted ceiling, deep chairs upholstered in dark velvet, and a fireplace large enough to stand in. A man stood by the fire, his back to her, and even in silhouette she could see the unnatural stillness of him, the way he held himself with a kind of coiled grace. "You made it," he said without turning. "Unharmed?" "Yes," Jessica said. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Good." He turned and she forgot how to breathe. He was beautiful in a way that didn't seem real, the kind of beauty that belonged in paintings and poems. White hair fell to his shoulders, straight and fine as silk. His skin was pale, not the pallor of someone who avoided the sun, but something more profound, like marble or moonlight. His features were aristocratic, all elegant bones and sharp lines, and his eyes were the color of old silver. He wore black modern clothes that fit him perfectly, a shirt and trousers that would have looked at home in any boardroom, but on him they seemed like a costume, like he was playing at being contemporary. "I am Bastien Fenwick," he said, "and you are Jessica Keller, age 26, who works as a librarian at the university and has been stalked for 6 months by a man whose name you do not know." She stared at him. "How do you—" "I made inquiries during your drive here. I like to know who I invite into my home." He moved toward her with steps that made no sound on the stone floor. "You called a number meant for a very exclusive service that caters to those with uncommon problems. The number you reached instead was my private line, which very few people possess. I am curious how your friend obtained the first number, but that's a question for later. For now, you need sanctuary. I can provide it." "What do you want in exchange?" Jessica asked. She'd learned long ago that nothing was free. Bastien smiled. It was a dangerous expression, full of amusement and something sharper. "I want you to stay here, as long as you like, as my guest." "That's it?" "That is it." He gestured to the room around them. "This is my home. It is called the Sunken Court, and it has existed beneath this city for 300 years. No one who wishes you harm can enter here. You will be safe. You will have a room, food, anything you require. You may explore as you wish. There are libraries, gardens, music rooms. I have only one rule." Jessica waited, her heart pounding. "You can never leave," Bastien said. The words hit her like cold water. She took a step back. "You're going to keep me prisoner?" His expression shifted, surprise flickering across those perfect features. Then understanding, and something that might have been contrition. "Ah, no, I phrase it poorly. I mean that your stalker can never reach you here, that once you are under my protection, you are under it absolutely. Never leave is not a cage, Jessica. It is a promise." He crossed to the door she'd entered through and pulled it open wide. "Look, no lock. You may test every door in this place if you wish. I do not keep prisoners. I keep guests." Jessica stared at the open door, at the corridor beyond. "Then I could walk out right now?" "You could try." His voice was gentle now, almost kind. "But your stalker is waiting for you up there. And I suspect you know that the police will not help you. Your friends cannot hide you forever, and running will only delay the inevitable. Here, you have something you have not had in 6 months. Safety. Real safety. The kind that does not depend on luck or locks or how fast you can run." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she had other options. But her ankle throbbed from the jump out her bathroom window, and she could still see the silhouette in her apartment window, watching her leave. She was so tired. Tired of being afraid, tired of checking over her shoulder, tired of sleeping with a knife under her pillow and still waking at every sound. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You don't know me." Bastien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost its amusement. Because you called me, because you asked for help, and because I have lived a very long time, Jessica, and I know what it is to be hunted." There was something in his eyes when he said it, something old and weary and true. "What are you?" she whispered. He could have lied. She could see him consider it. Instead, he smiled again, and this time she saw his teeth, saw the way the firelight caught on incisors just slightly too long, too sharp. "I am the vampire king of this city," he said, "and you are standing in my court." Jessica should have run, should have screamed, should have done anything except stand there, staring at him, while her mind tried to catch up with what her instincts already knew. The impossible beauty, the underground palace, the way he moved without sound, the driver with his two pale eyes. "Vampires are real," she said numbly. "Very. And you're their king. In this territory, yes. There are others in other cities, other countries. We have our hierarchies, our laws, our courts. We have existed alongside humanity for thousands of years." He tilted his head, studying her. "You're taking this remarkably well. I think I'm in shock." "That is fair." He moved to a side table and poured something into a crystal glass. "Here. Brandy. It will help." She took the glass because her hands needed something to hold. The brandy burned going down, but it did help, spreading warmth through her chest. "Are you going to drink my blood?" "Not without your permission." "Are you going to kill me?" "Absolutely not. You are my guest." He poured himself a glass, though she suspected it wasn't brandy. "I extended my protection the moment I answered your call. It is not something I do lightly. There are those among my kind who would see it as weakness, offering help to a human with no benefit to myself. But I find that I am curious about you, Jessica Keller. You were brave enough to jump from a window, brave enough to get in a strange car, brave enough to walk into my home and ask me what I want. That kind of courage is rare." "I wasn't brave," Jessica said. "I was desperate. They are often the same thing." He settled into one of the chairs by the fire and gestured for her to sit. "Now, tell me about the man who has been following you." So she did. She sat in a chair across from a vampire king and told him everything. How it had started 6 months ago with the feeling of being watched. How she'd noticed the same man in the coffee shop 3 days in a row, always sitting where he could see her. How the notes had begun, slipped under her door, left on her car windshield, tucked into her mailbox. How he'd known things, impossible things, details about her life that no one should know. How the police had told her there was nothing they could do unless he threatened her directly. How she'd changed her locks and he'd still gotten in. How she'd started sleeping with the lights on, stopped going anywhere alone, and still felt his eyes on her constantly. Bastien listened without interrupting, his expression growing colder with every detail. When she finished, he set down his glass with careful precision. "This man," he said quietly. "Describe him." Jessica closed her eyes, bringing up the face that haunted her nightmares. Tall, maybe 6 feet. Brown hair, always neat, clean-shaven. He wears suits, expensive ones. He looks like he could be a lawyer or a banker. Normal. That's the worst part. He looks so normal. Age? 30s maybe, it's hard to tell. Bastien stood and moved to a desk in the corner, returning with a leather-bound book. He opened it and turned it toward her. "Look at these. Tell me if you see him." The book was full of photographs, some old and faded, some clearly recent. All of them showed pale, beautiful faces. Vampires, she realized, but as she flipped through the pages, none of them were the man who'd been stalking her. "He's not here," she said. Then he is human." Bastien took the book back, frowning. "That complicates things." "Why?" "Because if he were one of my kind, I could simply command him to leave you alone. Our laws are absolute, but a human stalker is outside my jurisdiction." He sat again, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Still, there are ways. I will have my people look into him. In the meantime, you will stay here. You will be safe." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." He met her eyes and she saw the absolute certainty in them. "I told you, Jessica, you can never leave. I meant it, not because I will hold you here, but because I will not allow him to hurt you. Whatever it takes." There was something in the way he said it, a fierce protectiveness that should have frightened her. Instead, for the first time in 6 months, she felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. "Okay," she whispered. Okay? Bastien smiled, and this time it was warm, almost gentle. You must be exhausted. Come, I will show you to your room. He led her through corridors that twisted and turned, past rooms filled with treasures that belonged in museums, past windows that looked out on underground gardens lit by some sourceless light. The sunken court was vast, far larger than she'd imagined. They passed other vampires, all of them pale and beautiful and dressed in modern clothes that somehow looked wrong on them, and each one stopped and inclined their head to Bastien with a deference that spoke of absolute authority. Finally, they reached a door carved with roses. Bastien opened it and gestured her inside. The room was beautiful. A 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue silk dominated the space, but there was also a sitting area with plush chairs, a desk by a window that looked out on a garden, shelves waiting to be filled. A door on one side led to a bathroom tiled in white marble. "This is yours," Bastien said. "For as long as you wish it. There are clothes in the wardrobe, though I will have more brought tomorrow in your size. If you need anything, anything at all, simply speak it aloud. Someone will hear and attend to you." Jessica turned to him, overwhelmed. "I don't know how to thank you." "You do not need to thank me." He moved to the door, then paused. "Jessica, I want you to understand something. What I said about never leaving, about my protection being absolute, I meant every word. But I also meant what I said about the unlocked doors. You are not a prisoner. You are not a possession. You are a guest who may come and go within these halls as you please. The only thing I ask is that you do not try to leave the sunken court itself, not until we have dealt with the threat against you. Can you accept that?" She thought about it, really thought about it. "Yes," she said finally. "I can." "Good." He inclined his head, a gesture that managed to be both courtly and modern. "Sleep well, Jessica Keller. You are safe now." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Jessica stood in the center of the beautiful room and felt for the first time in months like she could breathe. She walked to the door and tested the handle. It opened easily. She looked out into the corridor, saw no guards, no locks, just as he'd promised. She closed the door and leaned against it, her eyes burning with tears. She hadn't let herself cry in weeks. Safe. She was safe. For the first time in 6 months, Jessica slept without nightmares. She woke to find a tray of breakfast on the desk by the window and clothes laid out on a chair, modern and comfortable and exactly her size. There was no clock in the room, and her phone had died sometime during the night, so she had no idea what time it was. Underground, she realized, there would be no day or night, no sun to mark the hours. She ate, showered in the marble bathroom, and dressed in the soft sweater and jeans that had been left for her. Then, because Bastien had said she could explore, she opened the door and stepped out into the corridor. The sunken court was different by whatever passed for day in this place. The lamps were brighter, and there were more vampires about, moving through the halls with that unsettling grace. Some nodded to her as she passed, others simply watched with curious silver eyes. She found her way back to the room where she'd first met Bastien, but it was empty. She kept walking, following corridors at random, and found herself in a library that took her breath away. It was enormous, 3 stories of shelves carved directly into the stone walls, with a spiral staircase connecting the levels. The books were ancient and modern, leather-bound tomes next to paperback bestsellers, manuscripts in languages she didn't recognize. As a librarian, she felt her heart clench with longing. Beautiful, is it not? She turned to find Bastien standing in the doorway, dressed today in black with a coat that swept to his knees. He looked like he'd stepped out of a Gothic painting. "It's incredible," Jessica breathed. "I've never seen anything like it. I have been collecting for 3 centuries. Books are one of the few things that improve with age." He moved to stand beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "You are welcome to read anything you wish. Consider it yours." "Mine? For as long as you are here." He glanced at her, something playful in his expression. "I thought perhaps you might grow bored, confined to these halls. I would not want my guest to feel like a prisoner." "I won't," Jessica said. She ran her fingers along the spines of the nearest shelf. "I could spend years in here and never read everything." "Then I hope you will try." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Jessica asked the question that had been nagging at her since she woke. Have you found out anything? About my stalker? Bastien's expression darkened. I have people searching. We will know more soon. In the meantime, I want you to tell me if you remember anything else. Any detail, no matter how small. There is one thing, Jessica said slowly. He left a note about a month ago. It was different from the others. The others were all about me, about how beautiful I was, how we were meant to be together. But this one was strange. It said something like, "They will never understand what you are to me, what you could be." They will never understand, Bastien repeated. Not no one. They, as though he were speaking of a specific group. I thought it was just the way he talked. But now I don't know. It felt like he meant something specific. Bastien was very still, his eyes distant. I will look into it. Thank you, Jessica. For what? For trusting me enough to tell me. He turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You do not know me. You have every reason to fear me, and yet you are here, speaking with me as though we are friends. That is not a small thing. You saved me, Jessica said simply, when no one else would. Why wouldn't I trust you? Something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable and surprised. For a moment, he looked almost human. Then he smiled, and the moment passed. Come, let me show you the gardens. I think you will like them. He was right. The gardens were astonishing, a vast underground space lit by some kind of enchanted light that mimicked sunlight. Trees grew here, real trees, and flowers bloomed in riots of color. There was a fountain in the center, the water sparkling as it fell, and paths wound through the greenery. How is this possible? Jessica asked, turning in a slow circle. Magic, Bastien said simply. Old magic, woven into the foundations of this place when it was built. The light sustains the plants, though it is not true sunlight. True sunlight would destroy this place, and me with it. It really does hurt you. Sunlight? It kills us, quickly and painfully. He said it matter-of-factly, as though discussing the weather. It is why we live beneath the city, why we move through the world at night. The sun is death to our kind. Jessica thought of every vampire movie she'd ever seen, every myth and legend. And stakes? Garlic? Crosses? Stakes will kill anything if you drive them through the heart hard enough. Garlic is merely unpleasant. Crosses are symbols of faith, and faith has power, but only if the one wielding it truly believes. He plucked a white rose from a nearby bush and offered it to her. We are not demons, Jessica. We are simply another species, older and harder to kill. We drink blood to survive, yes? We are stronger and faster than humans, and we will live forever if nothing kills us. But we are not monsters. Or at least, not all of us are. She took the rose, careful of its thorns. How old are you? 347 years. He said it easily, but she heard the weight of centuries in his voice. I was born in 1679, in France. I was turned when I was 28 by a vampire who saw potential in me. I have been king of this territory for 200 years. Jessica tried to wrap her mind around it and failed. What was it like? The world you were born into? Smaller, slower, lit by candles and full of horses. His expression turned distant. I remember the smell of the Seine in summer, the weight of a sword at my hip, the way music sounded in the palace at Versailles. I remember dying, though I do not like to think of it. And I remember waking with a hunger that would have destroyed me if my maker had not taught me control. He looked at her. Does that frighten you? A little, Jessica admitted, but not as much as I thought it would. Why? Because you chose to save me when you didn't have to. Because you could have lied about what you are, and you didn't. Because you keep your promises. She met his eyes. Actions matter more than age. Bastien smiled, slow and genuine. You are a remarkable woman, Jessica Keller. I'm really not. I'm just a librarian who got in over her head. You jumped out of a window to escape a stalker. You got into a car that belonged to a stranger. You accepted sanctuary from a vampire king and slept soundly in his home. That is not the behavior of someone unremarkable. He gestured to a bench beneath a willow tree. Sit with me. Tell me about yourself. I would like to know you." So she did. She told him about growing up in a small town in the Midwest, about her love of books that had led her to library science, about moving to the city for a job at the university. She told him about her apartment that was too expensive and too small, about her friends who were all getting married while she stayed single, about the quiet life she'd built that had felt safe until it wasn't. And Bastien listened with a focus that was almost unnerving, as though every word she spoke mattered. He asked questions, real questions about her favorite books and whether she missed her hometown and what she'd wanted to be when she was a child. And slowly, Jessica realized she was enjoying herself. She was sitting in an underground garden talking to a vampire who had lived for 3 centuries, and she was having fun. Time passed strangely in the sunken court. Without the sun to mark the days, Jessica lost track of how long she'd been there. A week? 2? Bastien visited her every day, showing her more of his home, introducing her to members of his court. She met Seraphine, his second-in-command, a severe woman with white hair braided to her waist who treated Jessica with cautious respect. She met Dorian, who managed the court's business interests in the city above, and spoke with a British accent that predated the American Revolution. She met a dozen others, all of them beautiful and deadly and unfailingly polite. She spent her days in the library reading everything she could find about vampire history and lore. She learned that vampires were organized into courts, each ruled by a king or queen who held absolute authority in their territory. She learned that there were laws governing how vampires interacted with humans, strict laws designed to keep their existence secret. She learned that to create a new vampire required permission from the ruling king, and that unauthorized turning was punishable by death. And she learned that Bastien was powerful even among his kind, that his court was one of the oldest in North America, and that there were factions who resented his rule and would move against him if they sensed weakness. She also spent time with Bastien himself. He sought her out every evening, and they would talk for hours in the library or walk in the gardens. He told her stories about the centuries he'd lived, about the things he'd seen and the people he'd known. He spoke of the French Revolution and the American Civil War, of the birth of electricity and the invention of the airplane. He spoke of other vampires, of alliances and betrayals, of loves lost to time. And slowly, without quite meaning to, Jessica began to fall for him. It was in the way he listened when she spoke, as though her words were precious. It was in the way he smiled at her jokes, genuine and warm. It was in the gentleness with which he treated her, this ancient predator who could kill her with a thought, but instead brought her books he thought she'd enjoy and made sure she had fresh flowers in her room. It was in the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't watching, with an expression that made her heart race. She knew it was dangerous. He was a vampire, immortal and powerful, and she was human, fragile and temporary. But knowing didn't stop the warmth that spread through her chest when he smiled, didn't stop the way her pulse jumped when he stood close, didn't stop the dreams that came when she finally slept. She was falling for him. She had no idea if he felt the same. Then, one evening, Bastien came to her room with a grim expression. "We have found your stalker," he said without preamble. Jessica's stomach clenched. "Where is he?" "That is the complicated part." Bastien gestured for her to sit, then paced the length of her room. "His name is Marcus Hendricks. He is, as you suspected, human. He works in finance, lives alone, has no criminal record. On the surface, he is exactly as normal as he appears." "On the surface?" "He has been feeding information to a vampire named Corvus. Corvus is part of a faction that opposes my rule. They believe I am too lenient with humans, too willing to enforce the laws that keep our existence secret. They want to return to the old ways, when vampires took what they wanted without consequence." Jessica's mouth went dry. "Information about what?" "About you." Bastien stopped pacing and looked at her. "Marcus was paid to stalk you, Jessica, to frighten you, to make you desperate, desperate enough to seek help from the one place the faction knew you might turn, the number your co-worker gave you. Except you dialed wrong, and reached me instead of the service they had compromised. I don't understand. Why me? I'm nobody." "You are not nobody." Bastien's voice was fierce. "You are a young woman who lives alone, who has no family in the city, who could disappear without too many questions. You were meant to be bait, Jessica. They expected you to seek help. They expected whoever took you in to be compromised. And then they would have leverage. They could demand concessions, territory, power, all in exchange for a human life. Jessica felt cold. But I called you instead. Yes, and I brought you here, into my home, under my protection. His jaw tightened. They know you are here now. They know I have taken a personal interest in your safety, and that makes you valuable to them in a different way. As leverage against you. Yes. Jessica stood, her hands shaking. Then I should leave. I should go before I cause you more trouble. Bastien was in front of her before she could blink, his hands gentle on her shoulders. No, you will not leave. I told you, Jessica, you are under my protection. That is not something I offer lightly, and it is not something I rescind. But if they come for me, let them try. His eyes blazed with cold fury. I am the vampire king of this territory. My authority is absolute. If they move against you, they move against me, and that is a war they will not win. I don't want you to go to war because of me. It would not be because of you. It would be because they dared to threaten what is mine. He stopped, something flickering across his face. I apologize. That was poorly said. You are not a possession. What am I then? Jessica asked softly. Bastien's hands tightened on her shoulders. For a long moment he said nothing, just looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. Then, very carefully, he released her and stepped back. You are my guest, he said, and my responsibility. And I will keep you safe, Jessica, no matter what it costs. But Jessica had seen the look in his eyes, had felt the way his hands trembled before he let go. And she knew, with sudden certainty, that she was more to him than a guest. She was something he wanted. Something he was trying very hard not to take. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, it made her brave. What if I don't want to just be your guest? She asked. Bastien went very still. Jessica. I'm not blind, Bastien. I see the way you look at me, the way you find excuses to spend time with me, the way you... She took a breath. I'm falling for you. I know it's insane. I know you're a vampire and I'm human, and this could never work. But I needed you to know. For a long moment, Bastien said nothing. Then he closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were full of pain. You do not know what you are asking, he said quietly. I am 347 years old, Jessica. I have lived through empires and revolutions. I have loved before, and I have watched those I loved wither and die while I remained unchanged. I have learned to guard my heart, to keep distance, to not want what I cannot keep. And do you? Jessica asked. Want me? Yes. The word was torn from him. From the moment you walked into my home, desperate and brave and beautiful, yes, I want you. I want you so badly it terrifies me. Then why? Because wanting you and keeping you are not the same thing. He moved to the window, his back to her. I told you that you could never leave, and I meant it, not as a cage, but as a promise of protection. But Jessica, if you give yourself to me, if you let me love you, I do not know if I will be strong enough to let you go when the time comes. I have spent centuries learning control, learning to be better than my nature. But my nature is to possess, to claim, to keep. And I will not do that to you. I will not make you a prisoner of my love. Jessica's heart ached. She crossed the room and placed her hand on his back, feeling the tension in him. What if I want to be kept? He turned, and the hunger in his eyes was staggering. You do not know what you are saying. I do. I'm not a child, Bastien. I know what I want. And I want you. She stepped closer. You said you wouldn't make me a prisoner, that I could leave whenever I wanted. So let me choose. Let me choose to stay. Let me choose you. Jessica, I'm choosing you, she whispered, if you'll have me. For a heartbeat, Bastien stood frozen. Then he moved, and suddenly she was in his arms, and he was kissing her with a desperation that took her breath away. His hands were in her hair, on her back, pulling her close, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had. He was cool to the touch, his skin like marble, but his mouth was warm and his hands were gentle even in their urgency. He kissed like he'd had centuries to perfect it, and Jessica felt herself melting against him, lost in the feeling of being wanted this much, this completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Bastien rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to keep you," he said roughly. "You understand that? I'm going to do everything in my power to make you want to stay. Forever." "Forever is a long time," Jessica said, smiling. "I have plenty of it." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "But you do not. You are human, Jessica. You will age, you will die, and I will remain. That is the reality of what you are choosing." "Then change me," Jessica said. "Make me like you." Bastien went very still. "No." "Why not?" "Because that choice cannot be unmade. Because I will not take your humanity from you, your chance to have a normal life, simply because I am selfish enough to want to keep you." His hands tightened on her. "If you truly want that, if you truly understand what it means to be a vampire, then we will discuss it. But not now. Not when you are caught up in the moment, not when I have just kissed you senseless and you are not thinking clearly." Jessica wanted to argue, but she saw the fear in his eyes and understood. He was afraid of taking her choice away, afraid of being the monster he worked so hard not to be. "Okay," she said softly. "We'll wait. We'll talk about it. But Bastien, I'm not going to change my mind." "We will see." He kissed her again, softer this time. "For now, we have more immediate concerns. Corvus and his faction know you are here. They will make a move, and soon. I need to be ready. What can I do? Stay safe. Stay here in the sunken court where I can protect you." He cupped her face in his hands. "And trust me to handle this." "I trust you," Jessica said. And she did. Completely. The attack came 3 days later. Jessica was in the library when the alarm started, a deep bell that resonated through the stone. She looked up from her book to see Seraphine appear in the doorway, moving with inhuman speed. "Come with me," Seraphine said. "Now?" "What's happening?" "We are under attack. Corvus has brought his people to our gates." Seraphine grabbed Jessica's arm and pulled her toward the door. "The king wants you in the secure chambers until this is over." They ran through corridors Jessica had never seen, down staircases that spiraled into the earth. Behind them, she could hear shouts, the clash of steel, sounds that made her blood run cold. Finally, Seraphine shoved her through a doorway into a small room carved entirely from stone. "Stay here," Seraphine commanded. "Do not come out until Bastien himself comes for you. Do you understand?" "Yes," Jessica said. Seraphine nodded and slammed the door shut. Jessica heard the sound of locks engaging, heavy and final. She was alone in the dark. Time passed. She had no way to measure it, no light except the faint glow of the lamp Seraphine had left behind. She heard sounds from beyond the door, muffled by stone but terrifying nonetheless. Crashes, screams, the sound of something that might have been magic or might have been something worse. And then, silence. Jessica waited, her heart pounding. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. No one came. Finally, she heard footsteps outside the door. The locks disengaged. The door opened, and Bastien stood there, and Jessica's relief died in her throat. He was covered in blood. It stained his white hair, his clothes, his hands. His eyes were wild, more silver than gray, and when he looked at her, she saw the monster he tried so hard to hide. "Bastien," she whispered. He moved into the room, slow and controlled, and closed the door behind him. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Are you?" "No, the blood is not mine." He looked down at his hands, as though seeing them for the first time. "I'm sorry. I should have cleaned myself before coming to you. I did not want you to see me like this." Jessica crossed to him and took his bloodied hands in hers. "What happened?" "Corvus came with 20 of his people. They breached the outer halls and tried to fight their way to you." His voice was flat, emotionless. "We stopped them. Corvus is dead. His faction is broken. It is over. You killed him." "Yes, and I would do it again." He looked at her, and the wildness in his eyes faded, replaced by something softer. "He tried to take you from me, Jessica. He tried to use you as a weapon against me. I could not allow that." "I know." She reached up and touched his face, heedless of the blood. "Thank you for protecting me." "I told you I would." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "But it was closer than I would have liked. They knew the layout of the sunken court, knew where the secure chambers were. Someone gave them that information. A traitor? Yes, someone in my own court. His expression hardened. I will find them, and I will deal with them. Jessica shivered at the cold promise in his voice. This was the king, she realized, not the charming man who walked with her in the gardens, but the ancient vampire who had ruled for 2 centuries and would not tolerate betrayal. Come, she said, let me help you clean up. She led him to the bathroom attached to the secure chamber and turned on the water in the sink. Gently, she washed the blood from his hands, his face, his hair. He stood still and let her, his eyes closed, and slowly the tension in him eased. I was afraid, he said quietly. When the attack came, I was afraid they would reach you before I could stop them. I was afraid I would lose you. You didn't. I'm here. She dried his hands with a towel, and I'm not going anywhere. He opened his eyes and looked at her with such raw emotion that her breath caught. I love you, he said. I know it is too soon. I know you deserve better than a blood-covered monster, but I love you, Jessica. I have loved you since the moment you walked into my home and faced me without fear. Jessica's eyes burned. I love you too. He kissed her then, and it was different from before. There was no hesitation, no holding back. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was his, and she kissed him back with everything she had. When they finally broke apart, Bastien rested his forehead against hers. I need to deal with the aftermath of the attack, but tonight, when it is done, come to my chambers. I want you with me. I will, Jessica promised. He kissed her once more, then left, and Jessica was alone again. But this time, she wasn't afraid. This time, she knew he would come back. It was late when Bastien finally came to her room. He looked exhausted in a way she hadn't seen before, the weight of kingship heavy on his shoulders. But when he saw her, he smiled, and the weariness faded. It is done, he said. The traitor has been found and exiled. The court is secure. And you, my love, are safe. Jessica went to him and wrapped her arms around his waist, resting her head on his chest. Good. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Then Bastien said, Come with me. There is something I want to show you. He led her through the sunken court to a part she had never seen, up a staircase that spiraled higher and higher. Finally, they reached a door that opened onto the night. Jessica stepped out onto a rooftop garden and gasped. It was beautiful. The garden was lit by lanterns that hung from trees, casting warm light over flowers and paths. But it was the sky that took her breath away. Above them, the stars blazed in a velvet sky, and the city lights glittered in the distance. I come here sometimes, Bastien said, when I need to remember what the world looks like, when I need to feel something beyond stone and shadow. Jessica turned to him. It's beautiful. Yes, you are. He took her hand. I brought you here because I want you to understand something. I want you to see the world you would be giving up if you truly meant what you said about becoming like me. Bastien, let me finish. He gestured to the sky. I cannot walk in the sun, Jessica. I cannot eat food or drink wine or feel the warmth of daylight. I will live forever, watching the people I care about age and die. I will never have children. I will never grow old. And if you choose to join me in this life, neither will you. So I need you to be certain. I need you to understand what you are choosing. Jessica looked at the stars, at the city, at the world spread out below them. Then she looked at Bastien, at the man who had saved her, protected her, loved her. I understand, she said, and I'm choosing you. Not because I want to live forever, not because I want to be powerful, but because I love you, and I want to spend my life with you, however long that life is. It would be a very long life, Bastien said softly. Then I'll have plenty of time to tell you how much I love you. She stepped closer, cupping his face in her hands. Turn me, Bastien. Make me like you. Let me stay with you. Not yet, he said, and her heart sank. Then he smiled. I want you to be human for a little while longer. I want you to be certain, truly certain, that this is what you want. And I want you to have time to say goodbye to the life you had, the people you knew. I will not take that from you. How long? A year. Give me a year to court you properly, to show you what this life truly means. And if, at the end of that year, you still want this, then I will turn you myself. He kissed her, gentle and sweet. Can you give me that? Jessica thought about it. A year to be sure, a year to prepare, a year with Bastien, learning what it meant to love a vampire king. Yes, she said, I can do that. Good. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. Then we have time. Time to love each other, time to build a life together, time to make this choice with open eyes. They stood on the rooftop, under the stars, and Jessica felt a peace settle over her that she hadn't felt in years. She was safe, she was loved. And she had a future, one she had chosen for herself. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The year that followed was the happiest of Jessica's life. Bastien was true to his word. He courted her with a dedication that would have been embarrassing if it weren't so endearing. He brought her gifts, small things that showed he paid attention. A first edition of her favorite book, a necklace with a pendant shaped like a rose, a blanket for the library because he'd noticed she got cold when she read for too long. He took her to the opera, to art galleries that stayed open after dark, to restaurants where they sat in private rooms and talked for hours while she ate, and he pretended to drink wine. He introduced her to the rest of his court, not as a human under his protection, but as the woman he loved. Some of them accepted her readily. Others were wary, uncertain what it meant for their king to love a mortal. But none of them challenged him, because Bastien made it clear that Jessica was under his protection absolutely, and to harm her was to invite his wrath. And he was patient with her in ways that made her heart ache. When she woke from nightmares about Marcus Hendricks, Bastien was there, holding her until the fear passed. When she grieved the life she had left behind, he listened without judgment. When she asked questions about what it meant to be a vampire, he answered honestly, hiding nothing of the darkness or the hunger or the cost. He also gave her freedom. He encouraged her to maintain contact with her friends, to keep her job at the university library. She split her time between the sunken court and the world above, and Bastien never once asked her to give up her human life, even though she knew it pained him every time she left. I will not be a cage, he told her one night when she asked why he didn't ask her to stay. I will not be the thing that traps you. When you choose me, I want it to be because you want to be with me, not because you have no other option. And Jessica loved him more for it. Marcus Hendricks was arrested 6 months into the year. The evidence Bastien's people gathered was sufficient for the human authorities to charge him with stalking, breaking and entering, and conspiracy. He would spend the next decade in prison, and Jessica slept easier, knowing he could not reach her. As the year drew to a close, Jessica found herself thinking more and more about the choice ahead of her. She researched everything she could about vampirism, talked to members of the court about their experiences, and tried to imagine what forever meant. It was Seraphine who finally made her understand. "You are afraid," Seraphine said one evening when Jessica sought her out in the training halls. "I can see it. You love the king, but you are afraid of what becoming like us will cost you." "Yes," Jessica admitted. "I don't want to lose myself. I don't want to become something I'm not." Seraphine nodded. "That is a wise fear. The change is profound. You will be stronger, faster, harder to kill. You will need blood to survive. You will burn in the sun. But Jessica, you will still be you. I have lived for 400 years, and I am still the woman I was when I was turned. The core of who you are does not change. It simply becomes sharper, clearer." "Do you regret it?" Jessica asked. "Becoming a vampire?" "Some days," Seraphine said honestly. "I miss the sun. I miss the taste of food. I miss my sister, who lived and died centuries ago. But I do not regret the life I have built, the things I have seen, the people I have loved. Immortality is not a gift. It is a choice. And like all choices, it has a cost. You simply have to decide if the cost is worth paying." Jessica thought about that conversation for days, and finally, as the year drew to an end, she knew her answer. She found Bastien in the library, reading by the fire. He looked up when she entered, and the love in his eyes made her certain. "The year is almost over," she said. "I know." He set down his book. "Have you made your decision?" Jessica crossed to him and knelt beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. "I have. I want you to turn me, Bastien. I want to be with you for as long as we have. I want forever." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "You are certain? There is no going back from this, Jessica. Once it is done, you will be a vampire. You will live by our laws, drink blood, hide from the sun. You will be giving up everything you were." "I'm not giving up anything," Jessica said. "I'm gaining everything, you, a life that doesn't end. Time to read every book in this library and see the world and learn everything I've ever wanted to know. You said becoming a vampire is a choice. Well, I'm choosing it. I'm choosing you." Bastien pulled her into his lap and kissed her, and she felt the wetness on his cheeks. "I love you," he whispered against her mouth. "I will love you for all of eternity." "Then turn me," Jessica said. "Make me yours." He carried her to his chambers, a room she had never entered before. It was elegant and sparse, with a bed draped in black silk and windows that looked out on the underground gardens. He laid her on the bed gently, as though she were something precious. "It will hurt," he warned. "The venom in my bite will burn through your veins, rewriting everything you are. It will take 3 days for the change to complete, and you will be in agony for most of it. I will be with you every moment, but I cannot take the pain away." "I can bear it," Jessica said. "For you. For us." Bastien kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. Then he bent his head to her throat, and she felt the sharp pain of his fangs sinking into her skin. The pain that followed was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Fire raced through her veins, burning away everything she was and rebuilding her into something new. She screamed, and Bastien held her, whispering words of love and comfort that she barely heard through the agony. Time lost meaning. There was only the pain, and Bastien's voice, and the knowledge that she had chosen this, that she wanted this. And then, after what felt like an eternity, the pain faded. Jessica opened her eyes. The world was different, sharper, brighter. She could hear the sound of blood moving through Bastien's veins, could smell the earth beneath the stone of the sunken court, could see every detail of his face with perfect clarity. And she was hungry. So hungry. "Easy," Bastien said, his voice low and soothing. "I know. The hunger is overwhelming at first. But I'm here. I will teach you control." He brought her blood, warm and fresh, in a crystal glass. Jessica drank, and the hunger eased, replaced by a satisfaction she had never known. "How do you feel?" Bastien asked. Jessica looked at her hands, pale and perfect, and felt the strength in her body, the power. She looked at Bastien and saw him not just with human eyes, but with the eyes of his kind. "I feel alive," she said, and laughed at the irony. Bastien smiled, pulling her into his arms. "Welcome to forever, my love." The first months of Jessica's new life were an adjustment. She had to learn to control her strength, to manage the hunger, to navigate the world as a vampire. Bastien was patient, teaching her everything she needed to know. Seraphin helped train her to fight, because every vampire needed to be able to defend themselves. Dorian taught her the politics of the vampire world, the alliances and enmities that stretched back centuries. And Jessica thrived. She found that she loved the sharpness of her new senses, the way she could read for hours without tiring, the strength that made her feel safe in a way she never had as a human. She loved the way Bastien looked at her now, with pride and desire and eternal love. She loved the life they were building together. But she also grieved. She said goodbye to her human friends, letting them believe she had moved away for a new job. She called her parents one last time and told them she loved them, knowing it would be the last time she heard their voices. She walked through the city in the hours before dawn and mourned the sunlight she would never see again. Bastien grieved with her, understanding the cost of her choice in a way no one else could. "It will get easier," he promised. "The ache will fade, and you will find new joys, new loves, new reasons to be grateful for the life you chose." And he was right. As the years passed, Jessica settled into her immortal life. She became a valued member of Bastien's court, respected for her intelligence and her compassion. She used her librarian skills to organize and expand the court's archives, creating a resource that other vampire courts envied. She traveled with Bastien, seeing the world in ways she never could have as a human, and she loved him more with every passing year. But there was one thing missing. One thing she had given up when she chose to become a vampire: children. She had known when she made her choice that vampires could not have children. Their bodies were frozen, unchanging, incapable of creating new life. She had accepted that loss as part of the cost. But 3 years into her immortal life, Bastien came to her with an idea. "There are children in the world who need homes," he said. "Orphans, runaways, children abandoned by those who should have protected them. We cannot create children of our own, my love, but we could give a home to those who have none." Jessica stared at him, hope blooming in her chest. "You would do that? Take in human children?" "If you wanted it, yes. We would have to be careful. We would have to teach them about what we are, ensure they understood the need for secrecy. And they would age while we remained young, which would bring its own complications. But if you wanted a family, Jessica, I would give you one." Jessica threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I want that." And so they became parents, in their own way. Over the years, they took in children who had nowhere else to go. They gave them safety, education, love. Some of the children chose to become vampires when they were old enough. Others chose to remain human, to grow old and have families of their own. Bastien and Jessica loved them all, fiercely and without reservation. The first was a girl, barely 6 years old, with dark curls and frightened eyes. They named her Lydia, and she grew up in the sunken court, learning to read in the library and play in the gardens. She chose to become a vampire when she was 25 and remained with them, a daughter in truth. The second was another girl, Olivia, who came to them at 10 with a fierce independence that reminded Jessica of herself. Olivia chose to remain human, and they watched with pride as she grew up, went to college, fell in love, and had children of her own. She visited the sunken court often, bringing her family to meet the strange, ageless parents who had given her a chance at life. Over the decades, there were others: Ethan, quiet and thoughtful, who became a scholar; James, bold and reckless, who became a warrior; Gregory, gentle and kind, who became a healer. Each one was loved, each one was cherished. And through it all, Bastien and Jessica's love only grew stronger. A century passed. Then, too, the world above changed, transformed by technology and progress, but the sunken court remained, a pocket of eternity beneath the city. Bastien ruled with wisdom and compassion, and Jessica stood at his side, his queen in all but name. On the 200th anniversary of the night Jessica had first called Bastien's number, he brought her back to the rooftop garden where he had asked her to give him a year. 200 years, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. And I love you more now than I did then. Jessica leaned back against him, looking up at the stars. I never regretted it. Choosing you. Choosing this life. I know, and I have spent every one of those years grateful that you did. He turned her to face him. You saved me, Jessica. I did not realize how lonely I was until you walked into my life, how empty forever felt without someone to share it with. You saved me first, Jessica said, from Marcus, from fear, from a life half lived. Then we saved each other. He kissed her, soft and sweet. And we will continue to save each other, for as long as forever lasts. Jessica smiled against his mouth. Forever sounds perfect. And it was. They stood on the rooftop, under the stars, two immortals who had found love in the most unexpected way. The vampire king and the librarian who had called the wrong number. The protector and the protected. The lovers who had chosen each other again and again across the centuries. Below them, the city glittered, full of life and noise and change. But up here, in this moment, there was only the two of them, and the love that had survived everything the world could throw at it. Bastien took Jessica's hand and led her back down into the sunken court, into the home they had built together, filled with books and memories and the children they had saved. And as they walked through the familiar corridors, Jessica felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She had been terrified the night she called for help, desperate and alone and running from a threat she couldn't escape. She had dialed the wrong number and reached a vampire king who had promised her she could never leave. And he had been right. She could never leave, not because he held her captive, but because she had found something here, in the darkness beneath the city, that she had never known she was missing. She had found home. She had found family. She had found love that would last forever. And she had found herself. In the grand library, Bastien pulled her close and kissed her forehead. Happy anniversary, my love. Happy anniversary, Jessica whispered back. And as they stood together, surrounded by centuries of books and memories, the future stretching infinitely before them, Jessica knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges or joys or sorrows awaited them in the endless years ahead, they would face it together, forever, the way it was always meant to be.